Welcome to the show. Welcome to We Do Better News, the news show about solutions in the United States, solutions to human needs, and the barriers to us solving those problems. My name is Rick Rifkin. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm coming to you live from Austin, Texas. We're going to be live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time here on YouTube. So let's get started with the show. Up in Niagara Falls, the Maid of the Mist tours, famous tours, they've been in operation for over 100 years, and they ferry about 1.6 million tourists a year. And so there was recently an announcement that Maid of the Mist ferries would start to go electric, and there are currently 2 ferries under construction that are going to be emission-free, 100% electric, and they're being built by the Berger Boat Company in Wisconsin, and the lithium-ion batteries are going to be manufactured by ABB. And so this is a pretty large production, as you can see, or there's a large announcement, rather. As you can see, the boat is going to be a double-decker. It's going to be white, green, and blue to kind of show off the green feel that it has. Over in Denver, Colorado, recently psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, were decriminalized. Now it passed on a very slim margin by it was about 50.5% to about 49.5% when the votes came out. So it's still, I would say, it's still a controversial issue, and it's still something that Americans are not sure about. And that's why it won on such a slim margin in Denver. Now, what's really important to understand now is that we are starting to see lots and lots of research into psychedelics, including psilocybin. Johns Hopkins University currently has psilocybin trials. And in addition to that, the organization MAPS, which is committed to the research of psychedelics in particular, they're doing trials on MDMA, aka ecstasy. And what they're doing is they're trying to see if MDMA is useful for treating PTSD. And there's about 10 million Americans currently that have PTSD. So if we can find a solution to that through therapies using MDMA or different psychedelics, that could be a serious breakthrough. And MAPS is saying that they should get through the end of phase 3, which is needed for FDA, Federal Drug Administration approvals, meaning that it could become a legal treatment, not just experimental. And they're saying that they can do this by about 2021. And so hopefully these drugs become fully researched and we find out what the positives and negatives are, so that it's not just controversial. Hopefully we do have the science behind this. Next is we're finding out that virtual reality headsets are not just for video games. Airlines have recently come out with, they've recently purchased through companies that manufacture VR headsets to create an on-flight sort of relaxation system where customers who are flying, particularly first and business class, can put on a headset and really relax into their flight. And this technology is also being seen at the dentist office. And the dentist office is a particularly uncomfortable situation. And so that's why Opera VR, which is a product of operability, has been created by Brian Laskin, Dr. Laskin. He's a dentist himself. And so he designed the technology to use with his patients and with the patients of other dentists. And so again, it kind of creates a relaxing experience. And they say that it works even better than laughing gas. Okay, so next I want to bring on our special guest, Brent DeRidder. Brent DeRidder is the founder of the Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief. Brett's going to be coming in to us via phone. We did have some technical issues coming in, so he is on here with me on speakerphone. All right, Brent, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Rick. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Let me just put you back on. I think that should be a little better. How are you doing, Brent?
Doing great, buddy. How are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. Glad to have you on. Thanks for being here. So tell me, what part of the country are you in, and where's the Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief based out of?
I am right on the coast in southeastern North Carolina. I'm right outside of Wilmington, a little town called Hampstead. And the Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief, what makes it so cool is that we're actually not based out of anywhere. It's a group of virtual and real life volunteers that all work from their respective homes.
And so before we got on the interview, Brent, we were talking about Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief's response to Hurricane Harvey. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was working with a group called Anarchist Ambassadors on different projects, trying to help educate folks and feed the hungry and help house people and all sorts of different projects. And my daughter walked in to the bedroom and wanted to talk to me about the hurricane that was hitting Texas. And it was just making landfall in Texas, I believe, if my memory serves me right. And she said that we needed to do something. And I said, okay. And we started trying to organize a food drive in our neighborhood. And then she said, no, Dad, we need to really do something. You need to talk to your libertarian friends. And so I hopped on the computer and mentioned it to a few folks, and it turned into a pretty large scale for what we were doing. And for the time it took to put together a pretty large scale operation. We had people driving supplies in. We had supplies shipped from New Hampshire to Texas on a semi truck. We had folks going in with boats and supplies to do water rescues from different states. We had people organizing food drives and donation drives in their communities and driving it down there. And we raised probably about $10,000, and it all, like I said, it all snowballed from a 12-year-old girl's request to do something.
Got it. So you've got food supplies coming in to Texas. You've got people driving down there. You've got donations. How long did it take for the group to mobilize?
It took no time at all. I've worked in, I've volunteered a lot in my life. I've worked in different nonprofit sectors and done different things, and I have never found a movement, a community so ready and willing to do for others as the Liberty movement. I mean, it took almost no time at all. As soon as I mentioned it, people were organizing, and I think within just a couple of hours, we had people that were actually on the road on the way to Texas so that we could put them to work.
Really? So people who got normal jobs, families, they were dropping what they were doing and going to Texas.
Yeah. As the hurricane was still hitting, I mean, this wasn't the aftermath of the hurricane. This was while it was making landfall, we got started. And yeah, within just a few hours, people were dropping their everyday lives and trucking it down to Texas from all parts of the United States. We had some folks go from Missouri. Some folks from the East Coast went, and it took off really, really quickly with minimal effort.
Got it. And so you've got how many people down in Texas at this point?
Right now or then?
No, I mean then.
I'm assuming. Yeah, okay.
A few hours in or a day in, you've got how many people there?
We probably had 10 or 15 volunteers that were working directly with us, but we also had part of what we did was actually send supplies and people, and they did water rescue, and it was amazing. We had amazing volunteers that were working directly with us, but we also facilitated communication for other groups and individuals to get things where they needed to be and to get people rescued when they needed to be rescued. So it was all kind of by the seat of our pants. There's really no telling how many people we were working with, there were probably 10 to 15 direct volunteers that were LCDR volunteers. And I would say it would not surprise me to hear, 100 or more that were indirectly involved with what we were doing.
Got it. So roughly 100 people, but it's hard to tell. And what did you guys end up doing when you got there? Was it a lot of water rescue? Was it food? What was it?
So I actually never left North Carolina. The guys that went down there, God bless them, they were amazing. There was a lot of packing up. I remember some fellows from Missouri really stick out in my mind, and they, within hours of us talking about it, Zach Garrettson and Matt Mahler, and those guys had loaded up a truck and had just massive amounts of supplies that they were taking with them. I think they had a boat with them to do water rescue, and yeah, we did a little bit of everything. When we were being told that it wasn't safe, that government employees and FEMA workers or Red Cross or whoever wasn't going in because it was too dangerous. We were told that areas were too dangerous because of looters. It was too dangerous because of flooding. Our volunteers were going around those roadblocks and getting into the dangerous situations that government wouldn't get into.
So there were roadblocks set up by the government. What authorities were they? Was it FEMA? Was it the local police?
So information when you're working in disaster relief, especially when you're so disorganized, and we were disorganized because, like I said, there was no grand plan going into it. So some of the information we got varied, but we were told that Red Cross and FEMA were at roadblocks where there were police, and then we were also told that either Red Cross or FEMA had their own roadblocks where they were stopping people who were going in with donations and asking them to give up their donations and turn around, and telling them that they would distribute those donations. However, we were also getting reports that FEMA and Red Cross employees were selling water and were selling supplies that had been donated. We were told that the supplies weren't going where they were supposed to go, so our folks decided that they would not be relinquishing their supplies, and they actually did go around those roadblocks and refused to let, they refused to be stopped.
So say that again. So some of the people in your group are saying that FEMA and the Red Cross were selling the supplies that were donated or were put together to be handed out. They were selling that, turning around and selling that?
We were told that not the organizations themselves, but that there were employees and volunteers that were there working with either the Red Cross or FEMA, and that those people were selling some of the supplies that were confiscated. They were essentially confiscating supplies when people were not allowed to drive in with those supplies. They were just taking the supplies and turning people away. And yep, we heard that they were being sold. We also were told that they were taking credit for it, that they were telling people that they had organized all these supply drives and things like that. But essentially, they were stopping individuals and volunteer organizations and taking what they had.
So, for example, if there's a shelter up, they might take credit for the shelter if even if someone else had put it together. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, we got so we worked with other organizations as well, and we did a little bit of work here in North Carolina for Florence, and that was one of the reports we got out of Florence was that the Cajun Navy in this area had put together a shelter, and that FEMA came in and with a news organization and was telling the news organization about this great shelter they had put together. And the shelter full of evacuees actually started screaming at FEMA to go away, and that shelter was put together by the Cajun Navy. So, yep.
Yeah. So at We Do Better, we've we've written a little bit about the Cajun Navy. We know about the Cajun Navy. Did you guys end up working with them at all?
We did. We worked with them some in Florence, and we were able to work with them in Texas as well. It was a little less organized, but yeah, they're one of those organizations that they're not the most well organized, but they were really making things happen, really getting things done without the big funding of government and without the structure of government. They were making things happen. So we were able to share resources in Texas, and we did the same thing with a different Cajun Navy organization. I think you probably know there's several different Cajun Navy organizations, and we worked with multiple Cajun Navy organizations in both of those efforts.
What do you think makes sort of the Cajun Navy or Liberty Coalition model so effective? Is it just that you're so lean and you got your cell phone, there's no need for any paperwork, authority, you just run out and get stuff done?
So yeah, we're definitely lean. There's not all that extra government fat. We don't have to go through, we don't have to jump 10 hurdles to make a thing happen. We don't put obstacles in our own way. So that's a huge benefit. The other thing that makes us so successful, while we're able to be so much, we may not get as much done as government does because we don't have that funding, but we're so efficient in what we do because people see that government is not succeeding when they do try. If you've lived on the East Coast at all, I know folks from New York and New Jersey all the way down to Florida that'll tell you how awful FEMA is and how unproductive it is to try to work with them, and how they've been manipulated and taken advantage of. And that's all through the Gulf Coast with hurricanes and tropical storms and things like that. The weather we see out here, folks are even people who are very pro-government recognize that some of these arms don't work the way they're supposed to.
So you've talked to Democrats and Republicans, and they're not particularly fond of FEMA?
Right, yeah. There's a lot of anti-FEMA organizations out there, and yeah, so people are not big fans of the way government handles disaster relief, and that's another one of those things that made us grow so quickly was while we were organized by libertarians and folks within the liberty movement. It wasn't just those people. It was Democrats and Republicans. We had the far right, the far left, and everybody in between was able to agree in that moment, government's not doing what they're supposed to do. We're going to make this happen. And we were working with people of all ideologies, all backgrounds. It was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I got it. So what do what's your personal opinion? What do you think it is? Do you think the folks at FEMA are malicious, or are they taking on a task that's just too big for them to handle?
Well, I think that government and those agencies are inefficient. I think that bureaucracy makes organizations like that inefficient. And I absolutely believe that there are people with malicious intent. But to be fair, those people are everywhere, and I would imagine that if we continue on as an organization, like I hope we will, that we'll come across some of those people too. But I think most people that get involved get involved to do the right thing and to help, and I think that they end up quickly jaded, and their enthusiasm is wasted in government work.
Right. I see what you mean. That it's the wrong model. Right. So. Right. So tell me, the Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief, so between Harvey and now, you did some work for Hurricane Florence, right?
We did. We weren't able to do as much for Florence because the media didn't pick up on it, and all of our volunteers that had worked during Harvey had kind of gone back to, like I said, there was no grand scheme going in. So once it was done, we all went back to our individual projects. All the leadership did with, back to our usual jobs and our Liberty projects. And then Florence hit and my family was displaced. We had to go all the way to Alabama. and ran into a lot of really hard times while we were out there, and LCDR kind of came together and raised the money to get us back home and get us stable when we were home. And us getting that second wind, rallying around one of our own, kind of pushed us forward. So we're getting legal with the IRS and ready so that we can take donations. We've got a new website about the launch. We got a fantastic volunteer from one of our interviews we did on the Tom Woods show. Michael Nolan, our new IT guy, is amazing. And there's a lot to launch at the end of this year. So we did a little bit with Florence. We weren't able to do as much as we wanted to. And then we decided we were going to take some time to organize ourselves so that we can be a solid answer from the Liberty Movement as to what we would do during a natural disaster if government's not around.
Gotcha. So I know there's a Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook, you just have to go to Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief. Type that in Facebook and you'll find the page. Now, are you also going to have you said the website's under construction. Do you have a domain yet?
We do have a domain. I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but I can certainly pass it along if you want to share around the link. We've also got our Facebook group, which if you'll just look up under groups, look up Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief. There's a networking group that you can join, and we will, as soon as we've got the website up, we'll post that on our Facebook page and our group, which have been fairly dormant for the last several months, but it's now picking up. We've got a new volunteer, a new social media volunteer that's trying to get things going in the group again and get people signed up to volunteer. And as we get into this hurricane season, we're ready to do a little bit of grassroots work while we're still organizing our foundation.
Now, are you open door to additional volunteers at this time?
Yeah, always. So one of the things that we really push is there is a minimal amount that's going to go from the top down. And we do have leadership within our organization. We've got a board of directors and we've got coordinators for different teams that kind of help to get things done. But just like in Harvey, the way we want to do things is through grassroots efforts and getting people, individuals and volunteers out there doing their own thing, helping however they can. So we are always accepting volunteers. The best way to volunteer is to go to that Facebook group, and you'll see a post by our virtual volunteer, Casey, and just click on the link and sign up to volunteer in your state.
Fantastic. So we're going to post that in the comments of the show or the show notes in the description, and we'll be sharing that on our Facebook page as well. Now, we've got about a minute left, Brent. Do you want to say anything else before we leave? Yeah, I do. So we've had in the past some questions about where the donations go and what you can donate and how you can help when there's not an actual disaster going on. And currently, we do not accept donations unless there's a disaster and we have a place for those to go. That'll be changing in the near future. But if you want to do something, if you want to get involved, more than money, the most helpful thing to do is sign up with your state or sign up on our volunteer sheet for your state. Be boots on the ground if something bad happens. Be somebody that can put together a donation drive or truck in some donations yourself. Just let us know how you can help. Perfect. Thank you so much for being on, Brent. We're going to pass all this info on, and you have a good evening, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate it, buddy. You guys have a good one.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Again, that was Brent DeRidder from the Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief. Again, we want to thank Brent for being on and for being such a gracious guest and giving us a lot of information about just how grassroots groups operate when it comes to disaster relief. It's not something that we hear about all the time. And I want to get into just kind of, Brent was talking a little bit about inefficiencies, right? It's particularly inefficiencies in government. And one of the things that just came out was how the Trump administration, the federal government, had pulled the funding for the California high-speed rail project. The funding was about $1 billion. I think it was $928 million to be exact. So it was a whole bunch of money. The state of California had put together a plan to create a rail line basically from San Diego all the way up to San Francisco. The first phase would have ran, as you can see in the diagram, from San Francisco all the way down to, let me see, about the Palmdale area. And there would be other phases as well. Now, so far, there's only a small section of that that's been complete. And so the federal government decided to pull the funding. And Donald Trump, the president, in a tweet, had mentioned this a while back, and he had threatened a few times to pull the funding, right? And so this has been a story nationally about how the high-speed rail authority has just been inefficient, how the politicians in California have just been throwing money at this thing left and right. And, you know, there's a point to talking about all this, right? You know, we can laugh at, you know, we were talking to Brent, we can laugh at FEMA, we can laugh at, well, the state of California as a whole. We were talking about them last week, by the way. And you think, well, it's one thing just to laugh at politicians and complain, right? We complain about, oh, this guy said this, and why is he spending all this money? But the thing is we actually have to have something that we can stand by. So it's one thing to have an enemy, right? To have, okay, we don't like California politicians. They're the enemy. I want nothing to do with them. Okay, that's step one. But we also need to have something that we're standing for. We need something that we're moving towards. Okay? And so what we need to identify is that the system of government, particularly, you know, the state level funding, the federal level funding, whether it's building railroads or conducting disaster relief, that centralization of power and money does not respond to what's actually happening in the real world. Okay, when you're talking about all these state actors, right? You're talking about local, county, state, federal. You've got other regulatory bodies in there somewhere. You've got all these different levels of approval, right? It slows the process down. It completely disconnects the person doing the work from the actual outcome. And the whole system has been completely out of alignment with what actually needs to happen. Okay, do we actually need a rail from San Francisco to LA? Is that actually something that the average person needs? Because to me, it just sounds like, you know, man, I'm a software salesman and I got clients in LA. So, hey, I can hop on the shuttle and meet my clients and it's cheaper than flying. You know, is that a trip that people regularly make? You know, I don't really know if that's particularly needed. You know, why can't we just hop on a $125 American airline flight or drive the 8 hours it takes? Why that? Why did the government pick that? Well, there was no like consumer demand. It's not like they polled Californians and were like, you know, what do you know, is it too expensive to go to San Francisco? Do you need help getting to San Francisco, guys? Well, we're going to spend $4 billion. That's not how stuff works in the real life. In real life, you've actually got to meet a demand. You got to have some customer service, right? But you know, it's like I can't sell you this gray shirt if you don't need a gray shirt, right? You know, or what if you don't know how to make gray shirts and you try to hire people how to make gray shirts, right? It's like it's a whole mess. Like they don't know what they're doing, how to do it. There's no one in the state of California that's really an expert in building building high-speed rails. I mean, pretty much no one in the United States is. I mean, it's like we don't really even have any reliable high-speed rails in the United States, right? So we've got to get past these gigantic programs like FEMA, high-speed rail, spending billions and billions of dollars. I mean, just look at the example we're talking about with Brent DeRidder. A few people with boats can rally together in a matter of hours, fraction of the cost, fraction of the man hours. There's no bureaucracy. There's no one saying, oh, it's too dangerous to go there. They're responding, right? They're responding within hours, right? That's the beauty of organizations and people and companies is that they can respond. They can respond to what we need. But government, with the way it's structured, with the way it's centralized, with the way that everything goes through this bureaucratic bottleneck, it just doesn't happen. It just can't happen. So look, guys, that's the show. Please go to wedobetter.org/donate. Give us a recurring donation, $10 a month, $20 a month. Help us keep the lights on. Help us keep the show going. We're going to have more guests next week and the weeks after. Give us a subscribe, like, thumbs up, hit the notification bell to find out when we got more videos, because we will have more coming. Again, my name is Rick Rifkin, coming to you from Austin, Texas, and I'll see you later.